It is now 1:00 p.m. We'll call to order our board meeting today. It's a virtual board meeting taking place today. We'll begin by having a roll call of our board members. We'll go by area. I'll call out your name. Please identify if you are present. Starting with Bear River, Charles Holmgren.
I am present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Weber River, Kyle Stevens.
Here.
Thank you. Salt Lake, Juliet Tannert.
Present.
Thank you. Provo River, Wayne Anderson.
Present.
Thank you. Green River, Randy Crozier. Green River, Randy Crozier. Are you here, Randy? Okay, Randy, that was a present. Randy is here. Okay, Upper Colorado River, Norman Johnson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Lower Colorado River, Jim Lemon.
Here.
Thank you. So we have a full quorum today. All board members are present and accounted for. I'm Blaine Ibsen, chairman of the board. I'm from the Sevier River. We'll begin our meeting. The next item we want to do is just Director Adams. Would you identify some of the staff members and other people who are present, please?
Yep, just had to get off mute, sorry. Be more than happy to do it. And let me start out first in saying Candace Hossenegger's here, Greg Sweetmiller is here, Jacqueline Pacheco, Joe Williams, Kim Wells, Krishna Khatri, Lindsay Russell, Marisa Egbert, Michael Christensen and Carmen McDonald, Michelle Pinkston, Randy Staker, Russell Hadley, Scott McGettigan, Shalaine DeBernardi, Theo Cox, Todd Stoneley, and I got one that says unknown. I think that is Jim. I don't see, oh, that Joel's on here too. If I missed Joel, I apologize for that. And then myself, I think that's the people that are on this internal one. There are more people out on the YouTube channel. I would have, unknown as Jim Lemon. Okay, thank you, Marisa. There's others out on the YouTube channel watching and going there. So that is who I see is present.
Thank you, Director Adams. And we welcome those of you in the public who may be on YouTube, and we welcome you today. Today's meeting is being held in the virtual format as approved by the governor of the state of Utah. It's closed due to COVID-19. It's closed to in-person attendance. It's being conducted electronically under Executive Order 2020-5. And this format's being used instead of in-person public meetings that normally occur. As far as public comment was invited for today's meeting. The period opened June 12th and closed at noon today, June 18th. And so all comments that relating to the meeting agenda received prior to noon will be read into the record at the meeting, and public comment will not be accepted during the meeting. So that's the format that we will be using in accordance with the governor's COVID-19 policy. Would ask that you mute your microphones unless you're speaking, and when it's your turn to speak or participate, if you will please identify yourself, who you are and who you're representing, that would be appreciated also. So beginning, first item on the agenda today is approval of the minutes. Board members, you've had a chance to read and review the board minutes. Do you have any things that you'd like to discuss or comment on the minutes? Okay. Randy Staker, did you receive any public comment on the minutes? Are you there, Randy? Director Adams, do you see Randy Staker?
No, I don't. It looks like he has fallen. Oh, there he is. Randy, have you was there any public comments that came in on the minutes? You're muted.
There were no comments, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Okay, any discussion or clarification from the board then on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Charles.
I was late on the beginning of the briefing meeting. I don't know if there were any corrections, but on those present, there is a couple of names at the bottom of the present list. Sid Monk is with West Cache Irrigation and not a subcontractor to Bear River Canal. And Tony Daz, D-A-Z, is a subcontractor to Bear River Canal. Those two.
Charles,
Yeah,
Charles, isn't the spelling on Sid Monk M-U-N-K and not M-O-N-K?
correct. It should be M-U-N-K.
Okay, one other thing, Charles, that we did mention in our briefing meeting is that on the list of those present, to also add the board members. All board members were present during that meeting as well, and they were not listed on the sheet showing those that were present also. So we did make that amendment or that suggestion for the minutes also. So appreciate your input there, Charles. Do board members have any other additions or clarifications on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, this is Kyle. With those changes, I would move to approve the minutes.
I'll
Okay.
second, Norman.
Okay. Kyle made a motion to approve the minutes. Norman made a second on to approve the minutes. We've had a motion and a second. Before we take a vote, is there any further discussion on the minutes? If not, we'll take a roll call vote. Again, we'll do it by area. Bear River, Charles Holmgren.
Aye.
Weber River, Kyle Stevens.
Aye.
Salt Lake, Juliet Tannert.
Aye.
Provo River, Wayne Anderson.
Aye.
Green River, Randy Crozier.
Aye.
Upper Colorado River, Norman Johnson.
Aye.
Lower Colorado River, Jim Lemon.
Aye.
Okay, we've had our vote by roll call. The voting was unanimous. The minutes pass as with the amendment suggested. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, under special items, project RE 439 for Porcupine Highline Canal Company in Cache County has asked that to be withdrawn from the agenda for today's meeting. They are evaluating other options at this time, and so they asked to have specifically be withdrawn off of today's agenda for discussion. Marisa, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? Marisa is the project manager. Apparently not. With that, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda under special items. This has three different parts of three different projects: RE 060, RE 238, RE 311. It's in the name of the applicant is Hooper Irrigation Company. It's on requesting terms to modify repayment schedule. It's in Weber County, so it's in Kyle's area. The project manager is Russell Hadley. So with that, Russell, we would invite you to give staff's presentation on them, but maybe before we do that, if we could have whoever is here from Hooper Irrigation Company, please identify yourself by name.
Theo Cox, President of Hooper Irrigation Company.
Okay, Theo, welcome.
This is Greg Sigmiller, the engineer for Hooper Irrigation Company.
Welcome, Greg.
Michelle Pinkston, Office Manager, Hooper Irrigation Company.
Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
Anyone else from Hooper Irrigation Company present? Okay, well, again, welcome. And Russell, if you can give us a presentation from staff on this, we'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is a special item request to modify the repayments for Hooper Irrigation Company, addressing previous projects RE060, RE238, and RE311. Funds were committed for these projects back in 2003, 2008, and 2012, and construction began on these projects shortly thereafter. Jacqueline, could you forward the slide? Thank you. Okay, the purpose of the projects were to upgrade and expand the existing secondary irrigation system by installing almost 14 miles of pipe to replace existing ditches, installing 2 regulating reservoirs and pump stations, serving lawns and gardens in Hooper and Taylor. These new facilities provided secondary water to existing residential homes, new development, and future growth. Currently, 1,259 connections are served in Hooper and 327 in Taylor for a total of 1,586. The total cost sharing spent for all 3 phases combined were the total amount of about $13,275,000, with the board providing over $11,284,000 for 85% cost sharing. The 3 existing projects are summarized as follows. RE060 was assistance for the Hooper Reservoir pump station and 3 miles of pipe and hookups. Approximately $5,541,000 of board funds was used, and it was returned at 3% interest with payments for 25 years, increasing by 2.86% each year until 2032. Next project was RE238, which was assistance for the Taylor Reservoir and pump station and 10 miles of pipe and hookups. Approximately $5,475,000 of board funds were used, and it was returned at 1% interest with payments for 30 years, increasing 3.37% each year until 2039. Final phase was RE311, which was assistance to the Hooper Haven subdivision and about 4,600 feet of pipe. Approximately $267,000 board funds were used, and it was to be returned at 4% interest with level payments for 20 years until 2030. And the existing payments are as shown on the screen here. The highest payment, you can see the total payments owed to the board for the 3 projects increases every year. It gets up to $717,000 in 2031. The current principal balance for the 3 projects is approximately $8,556,764. Based on the board's water service affordability guideline, Hooper and Taylor residents could afford to pay up to $82.76 monthly for all water service at their homes. This is the weighted average between the Hooper connections being 79.4% of the customers and Taylor's being 20.6%. The weighted average culinary water cost for Hooper and Taylor is $33.18 a month, with culinary water provided by Hooper Water Improvement District and Taylor West Weber Water Water Company. The applicant currently charges $408 a year, or $34 a month. As shown, the cost of water based on 1,586 residential connections puts the applicants below the affordability guidelines. As shown, the total cost per connection per month for residents is approximately, well, it is $68.81 at the current time. And again, the affordability guideline shows they can afford to pay up to $82.76 a month. This analysis suggests the applicant's rates are currently $13.95 a month below the board's affordability guideline. For 1,586 connections, this increased rate would amount to an extra approximately $265,000 per year that could be charged additionally. If the board allows the principal balance of all three agreements to be returned at 2.08% interest over 20 years, the resulting repayments are $246,500, $276,200, and $10,900 for a total of $533,600. At $533,600, the applicant's rates are still below the board's affordability guideline. Sorry about that. My cat just showed up. Okay. If the board agrees on the proposed repayment, if the board agrees to change the repayment term, staff recommends the board amend each agreement to state the balance owed will be purchased at 2.08% interest over 20 years. That is staff's report. Oh, thank you, Jacqueline. And the company has a request they would like to make to the board.
Okay, thank you, Russell. We'll now hear any additional comments in addition to what Russell has from the applicants of the project from Hooper, either from Theo or Michelle or Greg. If you'd identify yourself prior to making your comments, we invite you to give some comments or clarification at this time.
I think Theo was trying to, Theo, looks like you're still muted.
Is that better?
That's better. Yes, Theo.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Theo Cox, Hooper Irrigation. First of all, I want to thank the board for taking this opportunity to meet with us today, and also thank them for the initial loans that they provided for us to get this system under work. Also want to thank the board and the committees and the staff for all the additional help they've helped us with, especially Sion DeBernardi. I hope I said that right, and Russell Hadley for all their efforts and guidance and they have provided to us. It's a pleasure working with them and working with you. If I may, at this time, turn some time over to our engineer, Greg Sigmiller, who will identify some of the points and concerns for this request. Thank you.
Yeah, we do appreciate Russell and Shalaine's help with all that. They've been very helpful as we work through this. We do want to say how much we do appreciate your help. There are 3 requests that we would like to make, and I'll make the request and then kind of describe why we would like them. Number 1, we would like to request that we go with a 25-year period on the repayment. Number 2, we'd like to request a lower interest rate. One of our loans currently is at 1%. We'd like to see if there's a way of getting that down a little bit. And then number 3 request would be that of waiving the late fee that was assessed of almost $68,000, just over $68,000 for a payment that was delayed last September. Some of the reasons for these, number 1, we feel that the growth rate that was shown in the study hasn't occurred the way that it was anticipated. We're a little concerned after 2010, after our second system went in, the growth rate in that area pretty much dropped off. We're still trying to climb out of that and recover from that. We're concerned with the COVID-19 and the potential for things delaying again. There in your report, there was discussion of almost 200 connections. Some of those 200 connections that were on our little poster there in the office have been on that poster for several years. Some of them just aren't happening. We keep them there in hopes that they will, but it's a help for us to know what's out there, where they're at, and get them to go. So number 1, the growth rate isn't quite what we thought, and we're concerned about it not continuing as high. This 533 would basically take everything we have to make that payment every year. Number 2 is there was some discussion in the report about a $400,000 profit. In those books and in that report, the books for the Canal company and the pressure irrigation side of the company are combined. The canal company is doing fine. The pressure irrigation company is doing not as fine as the canal company, and so it's not a fair representation of the pressure irrigation company's books to throw in the canal companies. And so that $400,000 profit, our CPA is telling us that it looks more like a negative $78,000 right now rather than a positive 400. And so as we get our monthly rates in and connection fees, then we gear up for our September payment that comes the 1st of September. Number 3 reason is some concerns that we have with competing water systems around us. We do have some gentleman agreements with some of our neighboring secondary irrigation systems, but not all of them. Our concern is if we're not being able to extend water to some of these systems, they go to other sources. They'll go to culinary, they'll go to another irrigation company. And that minimizes the amount of connections that we would like to have in our system to help us, number one, pay for the system. And also we've sized mains for those regions to be put into our system. If they go to somebody else, then we've oversized the main for no reason. And so we would like to have some cushion in our fee, in our income, to be able to put out a couple of projects every year that would extend or expand our boundaries to some of these others and keep our boundaries where they're at. We did lose a chunk of development this last few months, about 4 months ago, to a competing secondary water system, just because we couldn't get a 16-inch main another 3/4 of a mile away. And so the 16-inch main that we have put in is now oversized because we couldn't get it to in time. The 4th point is another thing we'd like to be able to do is we would like to be able to put some money towards meters in our system. The board passed a resolution in March of 2018 that any new subdivisions coming to Hooper Irrigation after 2018 would be metered. That's on developer's dime, and so that's worked out okay. We've got just probably around 50 meters. I don't have an exact number this year. That's a little bit before the state's mandate. We see the need there. The state does have money at 85%. Our problem is we're having difficulty coming up with our 15% to do anything more. And so we would like to comply with that. It's environmentally the right thing to do. But right now, with the finances the way they are, things are tight, and we have been unable to put in any other meters as a project, as a company project. The 5th request that I have is the elimination of the late fees. When you add up those late fees, it sums to $68,000 for late fee for our $518,000 payment, about 13.2%. Of the payment is now increased. There were some communication issues that happened. The payment was made. The money comes out of 2 accounts, and one of the accounts was insufficient, and so the check bounced in September period. It wasn't until our CPA looked at the books in January, February, that we even realized that it hadn't been paid, and so there wasn't that communication. As soon as we found it out, we sent off the check. We sent it with a return receipt so that we'd know it was received by the State Division of Finance, and we got it taken care of. We feel bad that happened. We feel bad that there wasn't communication. Money was there, and we apologize for that, and we would request the waiver of that $68,152. So those are our requests, those 3 items, and our reasons for those requests. We do appreciate your help, and if you have any questions, I'm open to them.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Board members, Do you have any questions for either Russell or for the applicant, Greg, Michelle, or Theo, board members? And if you'll identify yourself, please.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kyle Stevens. 3 or 4 questions to start with. First of all, how old is the Hooper Irrigation Company? How long has it been in existence?
It's 1924, 22, over 100 years. Excuse me, that's when we started getting that water out of Echo, is 1923. It's been there, don't know, over 100 years.
Yeah, it started in 1866. We incorporated in 1901.
Okay, thank you. And then Greg, you mentioned something about, or someone did, about connection fees. How much are the individual connection fees for the secondary water?
Go ahead, Michelle, tell him.
Okay, this is Michelle Pinkston. The connection fees are $5,500. We raised that from $3,500 about a year and a half ago.
So they're currently $3,500?
Currently, yeah, previously they were $3,500, and our attorney advised us that any subdivisions that were in the works at the time we raised it still needed to be honored with that $3,500. So honestly, we haven't had a lot of subdivisions yet at the 55, but all the new applicants have been instructed that it is $5,500 per lot.
Okay. And then another question. When was the last time that the water rates were increased, and how much was that?
They were increased in 2012, and they went from $26. So we have a different pricing for less than half acre versus half acre to 1 acre. Less than 1/2 acre went from $26 to $30 or $360 for the season. We do give people the option of paying monthly or annually. And then anything above a half acre to 1 acre is raised from $32 to $36 or $432 for the year, for the season.
So basically a $4 per
Correct.
hookup increase since and the last time that was done was 2012, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have right at this point.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Other board members, any other questions that you would like to ask or clarifications? The applicants.
Well, let me go, but this is Kyle again. Let me go back to another question then.
Okay.
One of the third request on the from Hooper Irrigation is to waive the late fees for this year, which is about a $68,000 fee. Have there been other late fees in previous years?
You want me to answer? It's
Yeah, go
Michelle
ahead.
again. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure it was me. Yeah, since I have been here, there was some confusion. We weren't getting a bill, and I was in contact, and I have all the email information with the Division of Finance, and they continued to tell me I just started, and they kept saying, "Don't worry, we're making adjustments. When you get it, then you can pay it." So I know that there were some that they were paid extended, but it was because they were making some adjustments, is what I was told. I do believe Shalaine had to reverse some, but it wasn't on a we didn't send it basis, and there was a problem with getting the adjustments made to the loan, so they knew what we had to pay. I think there was a little bit of a breakdown with communication with the Division of Finance, but they were telling me I don't think they were necessarily relaying that exactly. They just kept telling me, "Don't worry, you haven't got a bill," and we didn't receive a bill. But eventually the board felt like we needed to pursue it, push it a little more. So we sent a certified letter to the Division of Finance asking them to please produce what we owed. But I do think that Shalaine did have to make some adjustments because of that. But there was constant communication. It wasn't sending a check with no money or anything like that.
Kyle, I don't think there were any late fees assessed. We've always worked
No,
with.
there weren't.
Well, I don't think there, to my knowledge, in our history, there haven't been late fees assessed to Hope Irrigation.
That's correct, Greg. I just know Shalaine did have to make some adjustments, so I didn't want to represent that it was always, but no, there have been none assessed.
And I'll ask this for Shalaine, then. Is that a correct statement then, Shalaine?
Well, technically they show up on their account. There were several years that it was a finance issue. Michelle's correct in stating, I do recall there was a year, I believe, that Hooper had to come to the board and request some assistance because they had spent the money to do some emergency repairs or something and were unable to make their payment. So I believe also in that year, there could have been late fees, but the board waived those because of that request. But yes, Michelle's accurate that most of the recent issues were due to the Division of Finance. And miscommunication somewhere, something was entered in the system, and it. So the system is supposed to automatically generate statements and mail them out, and it wasn't. So there was a lot of communication between Michelle and myself.
Sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Wayne. I guess I'm trying to understand, I can understand things coming up to make it hard to do something. What I can't understand, though, is how nobody knew that there was a $500,000 check that bounced for so long. And so nothing was addressed for a long period of time about that. That concerns me.
This is Michelle again. With good reason, I completely agree. Things, we've been overwhelmed a little bit with everything that's gone on. We have an accountant that comes in and does an audit. And so when the check was sent off, I knew she was coming in for the audit, and I hadn't balanced the checkbook, I guess the statement, because knowing she was coming in for the audit and she's the one who caught it. So that is on me. I feel awful about it. It won't happen again. But I never imagined, we've never ever bounced a check. It never occurred to me that there was a problem. Obviously, I feel like we've now corrected the issues that led us to that, what happened there. But that is 100% on me. It's something I feel horrible about, and you have a right to be concerned. But I do think that we've made the correct steps to correct it so that will not happen ever again.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you learned.
I did. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Norman. The question I had is related to the growth. Am I given to understand that the growth in the area has gone to other companies rather than to your company? Or am I misunderstanding that?
No, you're correct. There was a section, it was over, it's called Cherokee Village, and it has several connections to it. And we had tried several times with the developer. He knew he was within our service area. Our service area for pressure irrigation is roughly the same as the service area for our flood irrigation system. So he knew he was in there. He had shares in our system. He also realized that it was almost $90,000, almost $1 million, $900,000 to get this water line at that point in time a mile away underneath the railroad track, underneath the state highway to get it to his property. And so we didn't have the money at that time. We still don't have that kind of money. And so he went to another irrigation company. And so we basically lost that, and potentially will lose some of the surrounding development that may go on in that area. So it is a great concern of ours to lose areas that's within our service area.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kyle. Again, this is a question for Greg then. Based on that explanation, is that because of the difference in the water rates that they're, some of those are going to other companies, or what's the explanation there?
I wish I knew. I do know that I worked quite a bit with Weaver Basin to try and understand what was happening, where this other company was getting their water. Apparently it is water off of a Weaver Basin pipeline, and it is at an extremely reduced rate because the water is based on some of the southern, a railroad water contract that was several decades old that this developer found, or this water company found. And so, yeah, their water is a lot cheaper than our water just because of the contract that it has. And you could talk with Weaver Basin to get some more of those details. But anyway, there was no way we can compete, especially where he was already on that side of the railroad tracks and highway. It was just a matter of running the pipe up and hooking on it. So that's the direction he went.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Kyle.
That's all the questions I had at this point.
Okay. Any other questions from any of the other board members?
Mr. Chairman, this is Charles Holmgren. I was just reviewing the affordability guidelines, and based on affordability guidelines, it appears that you could be charging $14 more per month on these water connections. Are you pricing yourself out of business at that rate? And perhaps this is an area that if other water companies can provide cheaper water, that maybe you should let them have it.
Well, one of the things to talk or to discuss with that affordability study, as I recall from the presentation, that affordability study was looking at a rate of $408 per year, where in reality it's actually $432. So it is a little bit higher than the number should be more like $10 a month more rather than the $14 a month more. On that one particular situation, yeah, we could not compete with this individual's or this irrigation company reduced rate. And like I say, the cost of our water would have had to include crossing a highway and a railroad track, which put in quite a bit of. It was very expensive to do that. The only alternative to crossing that would be to put another reservoir over on that side of the tracks and highway and do another system. And that was infeasible as well.
Yeah, if it's been 8 years since you've had a rate increase, do you have any plans for increasing your rates going forward in the immediate future?
Theo, did you want to address that question?
Well, we haven't planned on anything in the near future raising. We've talked about it before, but we have a situation here. If we raise the secondary water, do we raise the ag users also? And that's the problem that we're looking at to see what would be the best way to go.
Yeah, well, I know, I being an ag user myself, am quite aware of how much rates have gone up in agricultural use of irrigation water in the recent past.
But yes, we have talked about it through the board meetings and stuff, but nothing has been done so far.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion for the applicants from the board? Doesn't sound like it. also Randy Staker. Were any public comments received electronically?
No, Mr. Chairman, there were no comments.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Okay, board members, do you have any discussion that you would like to have at this time, including any clarification or additional things you'd like to discuss regarding the request from the sponsors on this particular project? Any of the board members have any input at this time you'd like to give?
Mr. Chairman, this is Kyle. Did we have the recommendation from staff relative to the proposed repayment schedule? If we did, I missed that part.
Yes, it was. It was.
This is Shalaine. Can I address that?
Please.
Because it's 3 different projects, we didn't want to put all the numbers in and then have a total number. Just thought it would be a bit much. So we thought we would just be clear and concise and state an interest rate and years. And we know what that represents. It is in the report that at 20 years and 2.08%, E060 is approximately 246,500. E238 is approximately 276,200, and E311 is approximately 10,900 for a total of 533,600. But I don't think that all needs to be a part of the motion. I think you can simply stick with the interest rate and the years, that the principal balance will be returned at that with those terms, and we can write it into the amendment.
Well, with that clarification, again, this is Kyle Stevens. I would move.
Let's wait just. Whoa, Clyde.
Okay.
Let's see if there's any further discussion, and then I'll call for a motion after we have the rest of the board have any other chance for discussion. Any other board members have any further discussion at this time, or questions you'd like to ask? Doesn't sound like it, Kyle. So now we'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I will move that the board amend each agreement to state the balance owed will be purchased at 2.08% interest over 20 years and not waive the late charges that have accrued.
Okay, we have a motion made by Kyle. Is there a second on the motion?
Wayne, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Prior to taking a roll call vote, is there any further discussion from the board on this motion or this second?
I don't have one. Greg, do you?
This is from the board of Water Resources.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a clarifying question on the motion?
Please.
So not waiving the late fees, but are we allowing the late fees to be wrapped up into like the repayment scheme? I don't know if I asked that the right way.
Yes, sorry, this is Shalaine again. Yes, if you are not waiving the late fees and you state that as part of the motion, then it will become part of the balance out.
Perfect, okay, thank you.
That's a good question. Thank you, Julia. Okay, any other clarifications or discussion or questions on the motion and the second? Okay, if there be no further discussion, we'll take a roll call vote again by areas. Bear River, Charles Holmgren.
Mr. Chairman, I vote aye.
Weber River, Kyle Stevens.
Aye.
Salt Lake, Juliet Tennert.
Aye.
Provo River, Wayne Anderson.
Aye.
Green River, Randy Crozier.
Aye.
Upper Colorado River, Norman Johnson.
I vote aye.
Lower Colorado River, James Lemon.
Aye.
Okay, the motion has carried. Unanimous vote on the motion and second that was made. That concludes this item on the agenda. We appreciate Hooper Irrigation Company, you being here and being with us today. And we wish you, Theo and Michelle and Greg, the best of everything with your project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the board for everything they've done. We appreciate that.
Thanks. Okay, let's move the next item on the agenda. We've received some new applications, RE440, and it's from Nibley Blacksmith Fork Irrigation Company. It's up in Cache County. The staff will be reviewing that new application, and we'll be hearing more of that at a later date. We also received new application RE441 from Provo City. It's in Utah County. We'll be hearing more of that at a later date, future board meetings. Next item on the agenda, there are some new policies that the board is considering adopting. The first policy is on COVID-19 payment deferral, a policy on that. Shalaine, would you, from staff, please give us a report on this draft policy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The policy that you received is modeled after the CIB policy to go along with the state's direction of providing help to those who might experience hardship due to the COVID-19 emergency. The policy as written would allow applicants with existing projects to request a payment be deferred for a year, and we would not have to come ask you for that permission. We would simply take care of the amendment, or if it's a bond project, there's another process that the state treasurer has worked out with the board's bond counsel, Bill Prater, where we would be able to issue a subordinate 1-year payment bond that would then be paid at the end of their existing bond. So there's quite a large process that's been in the works, but this policy as written would allow applicants to have some help during this emergency if they are affected by COVID-19. So
Okay.
staff would recommend that the board adopt the policy as written.
Okay, thank you, Shalaine. Board members, do you have any questions from Shalaine regarding this policy? Okay, if not, Randy Staker, were any public comments received electronically on this?
No, there were not.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, board, before we entertain a motion, do you have any last minute clarification or questions regarding this draft policy? If not, I will entertain a motion regarding this policy.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kyle Stevens, and I also represent the Board of Water Resources on the Community Impact Board, and they, a couple of months ago, passed a similar type provision to allow for the COVID-19 emergency payments, and I think this particular one takes into account or was patterned after some of the same things that they did for the CIB documents. And so with that, I will move that the board adopt the proposed, the guidelines as proposed and drafted by the staff.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the policy regarding the COVID-19 emergency. We have a motion for that. Do we have a second?
This is Norman.
I'll second.
Okay, Randy seconded the motion. Before we take a roll call vote, is there any further clarification or questions regarding this motion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Bear River, Charles Holmgren.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Weaver River, Kyle Stevens.
Aye.
Salt Lake, Juliet Tannert.
Aye.
Provo River, Wayne Anderson.
Aye.
Green River, Randy Crozier.
Aye.
Upper Colorado River, Norman Johnson.
I vote aye.
Lower Colorado River, James Lemon.
Aye.
Okay, we've taken our vote. It's unanimous. So the policy regarding COVID-19 passes. Our next item on the agenda is another draft policy regarding reducing funds committed, and Shalaine will give us a staff report on that, if you will, please, Shalaine.
Yes, thank you, Blaine. This policy is more of an internal one. So if you have already committed funds to a project and bids come in much lower than expected, if an applicant wishes to reduce their obligation and especially their annual payment amount, this would allow staff to work within your guidelines and make those changes without having to come back to you for that change. We would notify you after the fact of what the change was that was made, but we could do this in between meetings. So staff recommends that this policy be adopted as well.
Okay, thank you. Board members, do you have any questions regarding this proposed policy? If not, I'll entertain a motion on the policy regarding reducing funds that have been committed.
All right, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make that motion. I move that we approve the policy regarding reducing funds as committed as written by staff.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second on Juliet's motion?
This is Norm. I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Before voting, is there any further discussion or clarification any board members would like to make?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you went to Randy on the public comment, if there was any on this one. We probably need to do that.
Yeah, we do. Randy, thank you. Randy Staker, was there any public comment on this one?
No, there was not.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Okay, so we have a motion and a second then. No public comment. Is there any further discussion before we vote? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Bear River, Charles Holmgren.
Mr. Chairman, I vote aye.
Weber River, Kyle Stevens.
Aye.
Salt Lake, Juliet Tennert.
Aye.
Provo River, Wayne Anderson.
Aye.
Green River, Randy Crozier.
Aye.
Upper Colorado River, Norman Johnson.
I vote aye.
Lower Colorado River, James Lemon.
Aye.
Okay, we've had a roll call vote. The voting is unanimous. This policy is approved and adopted. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is to discuss a memorandum of agreement regarding the use of CRSP power revenue funds with the Colorado River power revenues. And Scott McGettigan will give a report on staff on this. Scott?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Give me a second to pull up my slides here. All right, can everybody see that?
No.
I see you.
Let me see here. All right, that should be it. Is that correct?
It's loading. It says there's a presentation, but that's all so far.
I can see it here. It should be taking just a minute, probably.
Okay.
Oh, now it's gone, Scott.
Did it go away? I went away too, I think. I
Yeah,
apologize.
we can hear you, but the presentation's gone away.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, and you can see the presentation?
Yes. Kind
Okay.
of.
Kind of. That doesn't sound reassuring.
It's small on the screen, but that's fine. It says MOA 2, a new memorandum of agreement regarding CRSP hydropower revenues.
Okay, well, we'll do the best we can with what we have. So, well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Scott McGettigan. I'm the Interstate Streams Section Manager, and I will just be giving this presentation. I'm glad to be with you remotely. I appreciate this opportunity to address the board. That's not an opportunity I get very often, and I'm glad to be sharing this important work that the Upper Basin states have been working on for the past several months. So before we get going too far, it would be good to start off with a little background to give some context to some of the concepts I'll be discussing here. And so we'll dive right in and go back in time here to the Colorado River Storage Project Act, CRSPA. And many of you are probably familiar with CRSPA, and the primary objective of CRSPA was to authorize the construction of 4 initial storage units, and they'd be Lake Powell, Flaming Gorge, Navajo, and the Aspinall unit, 2 of which are pictured. And one of these units served as a torture chamber for 30 of us almost a year ago, as we all sat in an 8x8 elevator. And I threw a little gag in there. I don't know if you saw that, the help stuck in an elevator there. But hopefully that wasn't too soon for any of you, or brings back too many awful memories. But anyways, moving along. So included in this this act were several participating projects that were identified. That was one of the important things that this act did. Another thing that was accomplished by this act was to establish the Upper Colorado River Basin Fund. And this fund was established as a means to channel money from the Treasury for construction and also to collect revenues from projects. And the details regarding payments from the fund are described in Section 5 of the Act. And Section 5E also added a peculiar restriction and was the real issue that was at play with the need for this MOA. And we're going to take a little closer look at this Section 5E. So, reading any piece of legislation may be counterproductive in a presentation, but nonetheless, we're going to take a quick look at it and try not to get too much in the weeds with this. But there's several important things to point out here from these 2 little parts that I'm pulling from. So apportionment is the amount of money after all operation and maintenance and interest costs are covered from power revenues. There's a certain part that's apportionment to each of the states, and is apportioned in this these percentages here. You have 46 for Colorado, 21.5 for Utah, 15 for Wyoming, 15.5 for Wyoming, and 17 for New Mexico. And these percentages are not actually based on, if you're looking closely, are not based on the 1922 compactor. They were, as I understand it, based on an estimation of contributing snowpack to the Colorado River. And so that's just important to note there as well too. And then the real important piece to note here is that these revenues, I'll just read this second highlighted piece, revenues so apportioned to each state shall be used only for the repayment of construction costs of participating projects or parts of such projects in the state to which such revenues are apportioned. So that's an important piece to remember, and was probably the real piece that made some of these things difficult in the past, that led to this Memorandum of Agreement. And I'll continually say MOA throughout this presentation, and just so we're clear, when I say MOA, I mean Memorandum of Agreement. All right. So, and let's talk a little bit about hydropower revenues. Western Area Power Administration, WAPA, they're the federal agency that manages this repayment to the Treasury and collects these funds, and they market the power, and they're the wholesaler. So they have a firm power rate, and it is something that is set, and it must be the same for each customer. So that's an important piece of the problem as well, that all plays into it. And there's many factors that are taken into account when setting this rate. For example, operation and maintenance, obviously they have to make sure they cover those costs. Salinity requirements, interest requirements, are just again example of several things that are important considerations when they're setting this rate. But repayment is also considered and planned for when they're setting the rate, that this firm power rate. And this does tie into 5E, and it makes this provision in 5E sets the. Let me back up here. This provision that is used to in 5E to make sure that each state gets its apportionment, also makes it so that there's a collection. Now I'm going to go to the next slide before I go too far, because basically there's a fund problem. This application of 5E has necessitated the overcollection of funds and caused a recognized effect on the firm power rate. Basically, there's a collection of excess money to make sure that they have enough to pay for the project in a particular state, but in collecting enough to pay for a particular state's project, they have to charge the same rate in other states, and so there's this excess of money. Now, ordinarily, extra money for the states would not be seen as a bad thing, but this funding was not seen as being very accessible, as it would be meant for only new projects and would require additional authorization from Congress to construct, and so that's not likely to happen in this day and age. And Section 5E basically effectively siloed the funding for each state, and this requirement of 5E also set the stage for the problem that was eventually recognized. And the issue was seen by the Colorado River Energy Distributors Association, CREDA, as an unnecessary financial burden that was added to the firm power rate. And CREDA was interested in looking at ways to reduce the impact on the power rate that they were paying, and at the same time allow the states more access to the money that they would like to have. And so enter the Memorandum of Agreement, and this was a concept that was proposed by CREDA. And so the original MOA was back in 2010, and I'll maybe describe some of how this worked before we start talking about the details of MOA, the original MOA back in 2010. So the answer to the problem that we were facing was right there in the same paragraph that I've been highlighting only a part of before. So the revenues that are apportioned, they can be used in another state with the consent of that state. So repaying projects, if the revenues are shared, it makes it possible not to over-collect funds to pay back projects. But it needs to be done through agreement from the states. And so this sharing of apportionment was the mechanism and the means to allow us to share that, to actually address this issue, and to for WAPA to only collect what they need to collect to repay projects. And so this money that was saved, it was proposed by CREDA that with all of us entering this agreement, that they would take a certain percentage of it in the form of rate relief, and the states would take a certain percentage of it. And the original percentage was 42 to the states and 58 to CREDA in the form of rate relief. And that was a negotiated number back in 2010. And we'll see a little bit further in here what has happened since. And so reclamation, these are still reclamation, federal dollars that reclamation is the only one that has the authority to spend. And they're restricted, these funds are restricted to elective operation, maintenance, and replacement of reclamation facilities for participating projects. So some of the details, it was signed of the first one, MOA was signed in 2010 and 2011. It kind of straddled the changing of the years there. And it was signed by 3 Upper Basin commissioners and Wyoming's governor and Reclamation, WAPA, and CREDA leadership. The term was 14 years with an expiration in 2025. And the total over collection was to be 383 million for that period. And that's that number that was split between CREDA and the states. And so if you take out the states portion, that was going to be 161 million or 11.5 million per year for all of the Upper Basin states. And then taking that percentage, that same percentage that I talked about earlier, is 21.5%, which comes out to 2.47 million per year for the state of Utah. So during that 4 years, it accumulates at 2.47 million. We don't immediately have all the money. We didn't have the money all immediately available. And so that was how the original MOA was, how was the arrangement for that, the first MOA. And fast forward today, why are we considering a new MOA? And so many of you are probably asking that question, why we need a new MOA, and the states were asking the same question. We know there were still projects needing repayment after the term of the original MOA. So it was always anticipated that we would enter into another agreement after the expiration of the first, which was set for 2025. But WAPA and CREDA wanted it incorporated into their rate action. And their rate action is, from the little I understand about the power industry, there's a trigger that suddenly indicates to WAPA that they need to do a rate action, which is an adjustment of the rate, the firm power rate that they charge to their customers. And they wanted that rate action incorporated, or they wanted the MOA incorporated into this rate action so they could have certainty into the future that this MOA process was still going to be followed, and that they could charge the same rate that they had been charging, or not charge the same rate, but that they could charge the rate in consideration of a MOA, I should say. So that was why WAPA and CREDA had approached the states. But the states were initially uncertain, but then again, we saw it as an opportunity to address some of the issues that we had with reclamation. And the state of Utah didn't in particular have too many issues. It was several of the other states that the processes regarding how this money was used and how it was approved of to be used, and all these details were becoming difficult for some of the other states. And so we used this as an opportunity to work out some of those issues, which we feel like we have done. And we were also told by WAPA that waiting till 2025 may have resulted in slightly decreased available revenues. So that was another reason for looking at it now. But mainly it was the states used it as an opportunity to address their issues. And here are some of the details of the second MOA, and it should be signed in 2020, again by 3 Upper Basin commissioners, Wyoming's governor, and the Reclamation, WAPA, and CREDA leadership. This time the term is 17 years, and the term and the split or negotiated numbers between the parties. And the total additional avoided overcollection is going to be 323 million, with 58% this time to the states. So that was that 58 is 42 is a swap of what was previously the case with CREDA getting 58%. Now the states are getting, so it kind of makes up for the fact that CREDA got the larger half of the pie previously. And so we were using a blended, what we call the blend and extend approach to implementing this MOA 2, because there was still 5 more years on this, the first MOA. So that money's still coming in, but we've added on top of it the second agreement that these avoided dollars of over collection are now going to be also included. So this so this 245 million includes the remainder of MOA 2. And so it will equal out to be 14.4 million per year for all of our basin states. And then again, that same 21.5%, and which comes out at 3.1 million per year for the state of Utah. All right, some of the what's happened with the money in the state of Utah in the past for the last 10 or so years that this money has been accumulated and being used is we have the Olmsted Power Plant was partially funded by MOA dollars. And the Blue Cut Canal, I don't know a lot of details about this, but it was a water rights transfer with Reclamation. And that's partially, I don't know if that was entirely funded by MOA dollars or partially. Steinecker was, again, I don't know how much was partially or fully funded. And then Tyzac Pumping Plant is an ongoing project out in for the Uinta Water Conservancy District and the Red Fleet Reservoir. These are more recent projects that are being pursued. And there's also the ability to do upper basin projects. And this upper basin consumptive use study is an important upper basin project looking at different methods for computing consumptive use, because there's a lot of options out there, and trying to figure out which seems the best for certain areas. And that's being funded by MOA dollars too. So I guess before I go to the next part of it, let me ask if there are any questions, or I've confused you all sufficiently that you can't think of questions, and I'll leave it to you guys for to the board and to
Scott. Scott, this is Blaine. I have a question. Do you anticipate in 2037 having yet another MOA at that point of the game, or do you anticipate this will take it to its conclusion, or what's your thoughts on that?
From what I understand, that would take it to its conclusion, because all the participating projects would be paid off by that point in time, or the arrangement. Maybe they wouldn't be paid off, but the arrangement we've made only applies to the participating projects. So there's a point in time when they all get paid off, and I don't know exactly when that is, but this arrangement is only regarding the remainder of the projects to be paid off. So unless there was another construction of a project that applied to CRSP, there may be several on there that never got constructed. So you have the initial units and the participating projects that I believe most of which have been constructed. So that, to answer your question, no, I don't believe it would continue on after that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Charles.
Just a question for Scott. Is the funding used only within the Colorado River Basin or anywhere in the state?
So the funding is used for participating projects, as I understand it. So you have the Central Utah project was a participating project with it's the two units, the Bonneville and the Vernal unit, and the Emery County project was also a participating project. So it would be used on reclamation facilities within those projects.
Thank you.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and finish your presentation, Scott, and then we'll see if the board has any additional questions.
Okay, no problem. So you have all received a copy of the resolution regarding this MOA 2, and I'm assuming you've all had a chance to read it. And it's basically authorizing or supporting the the director to sign the second memorandum. So staff, I guess I could just read this to you. Staff recommends that the board adopt the resolution as written and authorize the director to sign the second memorandum of agreement concerning the Upper Colorado River Basin Fund. So he would sign that sometime soon here. We need to get it signed so that WAPA can finish doing their process to make it finalized.
Thank you for your report, Scott. Board members, do you have any questions or clarifications or anything about this MOA that you'd like to ask Scott?
Mr. Chairman, this is Randy. I think you ought to reference the date, June 18th, 2020, so that there's no confusion as to what resolution we're actually adopting.
Yeah, so when it comes time for a motion, whoever makes it probably should include June 18th, 2020. That's a good suggestion, Randy. Okay, any other clarifications or discussion or questions on this?
Mr. Chairman, this is Todd. Let me ask one more question of Scott. Scott, before if the board was to pass having the director sign it, do we need to wait for the final review draft of the second MOU from the Basin states before we do this, or does this need to be done prior to that?
I would believe we want to wait for to not have the. We want to make sure we're not signing a review draft, anything that says draft on it. So if that's the question you're asking, we obviously don't want to sign anything with review draft on it. But right now, the other states are doing a similar process going for their boards, not necessarily today, but in recent days here, they've been going for their boards and getting similar kinds of authorization. So this is not necessarily the act. What happens today isn't obviously signing the agreement. So that will happen sometime after today.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So Randy, Mr. Chairman, if I might, Randy, that might answer your question. This is the version as of today's date, assuming that it doesn't change what I would say too much, minor types of things. This is what I believe Scott would be recommending. So hopefully that clarifies something.
And this is Shalaine DeBernardi. If I could pipe in, I might add that Scott has not just been doing this on his own. He's had a lot of consultation with the Attorney General's office. So we are working under their direction. Even if you adopt this resolution and authorize the director to sign the second memorandum of agreement, he will not do so until the AG says it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalaine. I guess Randy's question, as I interpreted it, the way this staff's recommendation, it says that we adopt the resolution as written. That, to me, that would mean today, and that would mean that if it changes a word, then our vote does not mean anything, because our vote would be specific for this document as written today.
Well, the words as written refer to the resolution. The board adopts the resolution. The board is not adopting the memorandum of agreement. The board is adopting the resolution and authorizing the director to sign the second MOA.
This is Randy again. My understanding is we're just authorizing Todd to be able to sign the agreement when it is finalized and approved by the AG and everybody. We're just authorizing him to sign it once all those approvals are done. And I just wanted to refer to the date so that there wasn't confusion.
Will referring to today's date, though, lock us in on the draft as it is today?
No. I mean, it locks in this resolution, but it doesn't do anything as to the agreement that the AG's office is still finalizing.
Okay.
Is that right, Shalaine?
Shalaine, is that correct?
Yes. I believe so long as the date is referred to the resolution as well, not the actual date of the MOA, because as stated, the MOA is not complete. So yes, it's the date of the resolution. So yes.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, this is Wayne. This is all records of our meeting today with today's date on. So does there need to be a specific date to this particular thing? Because this action is being taken on this date today, so why does it have to be referred to specifically with this document?
I think what Randy's saying is that there may be several different resolutions out there, and he just wants to tie it down and make it clear that which specific resolution document we're dealing with. As I understand your concern, Randy, is that correct?
Just normally with most resolutions, you either have a number or a date that you adopt with the resolution. That just says, it's just another form of showing what the resolution was that we adopted.
So you can tie it to the specific resolution, not get confused with some other resolution.
Right. You know, that's pretty standard to either tie it to a date or a number on a resolution.
This is Wayne again, but if some changes are made, small changes are made, then that's not going to allow Todd to sign it unless it comes back to us for another vote.
No, the resolution just gives him the authority with whatever changes needs to be done to that 35 pages, and then approval of the AG's office. By putting the date there doesn't do anything to stop the signing of the agreement once those fine tweaking is done. Wayne, is my understanding. We're just authorizing him to sign it once the AG's office signs off on it, and that's what this resolution.
And let me be perfectly clear. The resolution that you have been sent, that you have reviewed, and that we are asking you to adopt today states, resolution of the Utah Board of Water Resources regarding the second memorandum of agreement concerning the Upper Colorado River Basin Fund, June 18th, 2020. It's right there. The date is right there at the top. The resolution has a date on it.
And there won't be any changes to the resolution. The changes are in the document that they're finalizing for the actual signature.
Yes, that's correct.
If I may,
please.
It would be highly unlikely that there's any substantive changes at this point. I mean, you're looking at maybe a comma or a period at this point in time. It's been a fine-tooth comb has gone through that document time and time again by several attorneys from our state, from other states, and I think at this point in time, I don't think we need to be concerned with it changing too much. But yes, as I understand it, what Shalaine has said several times is that this resolution is what you're adopting, and you're just authorizing the director to sign the MOA whenever we have the final draft or the final document that no longer has the word draft on it. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, any other questions or clarifications from the board on this? Randy Staker, were there any public comments received on this particular item on our agenda?
There were not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we have a motion and a vote on this, is there any further discussion from the board? If not, I will entertain a motion regarding this memorandum of agreement.
Mr. Chairman, this is Norman.
Go ahead, Norm.
I'll make a motion that the board adopt the resolution as written on June 18th, 2020, and authorize the director to sign the second memorandum of agreement concerning the Upper Colorado River Basin Fund.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. This is Randy.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Before voting, any further discussion or clarification on this motion regarding adopting the resolution? If not, we'll take, go ahead. Somebody had something?
Yeah, this is Wayne again.
Okay.
I guess I'm really thick between ears because as I just heard that motion, it was recommended the board adopt the resolution as of this date as written and authorized.
The resolution, is not the memorandum of agreement. They're different. The resolution is different than the memorandum of agreement. What we're approving is the resolution that authorizes our director when the MOA is finalized to sign that. This motion is simply the resolution to authorize our director to sign it. That's all this that's all this vote is the resolution only, not the memorandum of agreement.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I know where you're coming from, Wayne. I understand your question. I had the same question initially.
I just want to make sure we weren't locking ourselves into something that we would regret some other time. So yeah. I feel a little more comfortable about it now, so that's fine.
Yeah, the key in here is the word resolution. And this resolution only authorizes our director to sign the agreement when it's done, as I understand it. Okay, any other questions or clarification from the board before we take a vote? And again, the key word is resolution. This vote is only on the resolution, as the resolution is written. Okay, Bear River, Charles Holmgren.
Mr. Chairman, I vote aye.
Weber River, Kyle Stevens.
Aye.
Salt Lake, Juliet Tennert.
Aye.
Provo River, Wayne Anderson.
Aye.
Green River, Randy Crozier.
Aye.
Upper Colorado River, Norman Johnson.
I vote aye.
Lower Colorado River, James Lemon.
Aye.
Okay, the voting's been unanimous. Thank you, Scott. And Director Adams, when it's complete and everybody's reviewed it, it'll be in your court for signature. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will let you know.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is a planning report on climate change, water resources, potential adaptation strategies in Utah. And Krishna Khatri is going to give this presentation. Krishna.
Thank you, Chairman. Just I'm pulling my slides now.
Okay, great.
So good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and the member of boards. It's my great pleasure and privilege to get this opportunity to present you something about climate change and water resources. It's a very small research results that I'm going to present to you. So my name is Krishna Khatri. I'm working as a water resources engineer in the hydrology and modeling sections with the Craig Miller. So just as I said, this is the one report that we wrote to support the state water plan. So this is the supplementary reports that will be linked to the state water resources plan. And the main objectives of these reports were, how the historicals and the future climates are changing in Utah. What are the implications in water resources, or are there any signals of change in hydrology? What are the major impacts, and what would be some adaptation strategies? So it covers very big area: climate change, water resources, adaptations, but as I said, the scope of the report was just to supplement the state water plan, but it tried to summarize, what is going on within the climate, water, and what would be the next steps that from the planning section we would have to move forward. So whatever are presented in these reports are based on all the data results that were already published by federal agency, for example, NOAA, US EPA, USGS, Bureau of Reclamations, and etc. And by profession, I'm civil and environmental engineer, so I dive into pull those information, and then for this, I asked the help from one of the professor from University of Utah. I want to acknowledge him in this work. He reviewed this report. He checked all the scientific work, whatever are going in the Utah. And then I also want to thanks to Candice, Todd, Craig, Clay, and Summer, who read this report and then gave me some suggestions about the local context and about Utah. I'm grateful of them. So whatever I'm just summarizing, reporting here are based on this report. As I said, it's not a long and big report. It's a very small 30 pages reports. So I think the PDF is available. So we may have access on these reports. That will help to explain and to learn more about what I am presenting here. So in this presentations, just firstly, I will show you some of the results, some of the figures, all these technical stuffs on what are the observed signal of change in Utah climate. Basically, if we relate to the temperature and precipitations in the several decades, like 100 years, where we passed, that will indicate, what are the trend in general. Because futures unknowns, there are so many uncertainties associated. So next, okay, if there are some changes with the climate, then what are the observed signals of change in Utah's hydrology? So Utah hydrology means, I'm saying here is, what are the snowpacks, that's the snowpacks volumes, stream flow, drought, and floods are changing within the last decades. And then finally, I will summarize and the recommendations. Let me jump to the first, what are the observed signals of change in the Utah climate with respect to temperature and precipitations. So this is the map. It shows not only Utah, but entire United States. And it shows how the temperature, average annual temperature change since 1895. It's 122 years data. And then it shows the trend. So in this case, well, we are here in Utah. There are other areas we can see with respect to other neighboring states, how the average annual temperature is changing. If we look in this case, we are within this range around 1 to 2.5 in average within 122 years. So always, there are so many studies going on. They are saying the rate of change is faster than we have 100 years. So this figure on the right side shows average temperature trends of the annual average temperature of last 30 years. So if we compare to the left and right, then we can see the significant increase in temperatures. So even in the Utah, we can see, just looking on this map and the results, it was prepared by the NOAA, we can see 2 to more than 4 degree, degree Fahrenheit. So even in this map, we can see somewhere on the northern side, there is a high, and recent years, there are not such changes. So, this map shows that it's warming, it's going in the faster rate. So if we focus inside the Utah, and then we pull average temperature, annual average temperature change for entire Utah state. And then in this case, in the x-axis, you can see 1950 to 2017. And we divided, okay, let's see from 1950 to 2000, and then see after 2000 to 2017. This is just for the comparison purpose. There is no any scientific or climatic reasons. So I said, okay, let's see 50 years and that 17 years, how it changes. So you can see so many annual variability going up and down, and within this range, we found like a 1.3 degree temperature increase within 70, 80 years time period. And then we check if there is a statistical strong correlations or not. This mathematically it shows about 2.5 to about 2 degree Fahrenheit per century temperature increase based on this entire Utah state data. So this is average annual temperature. But if we see in the seasonal, here I didn't bring all the those variability that we can see in the annual. But if we say in January, within that periods, we can find the 1 degree increase. And it means 1 degree may have effect on the snow and the rain proportion of the precipitation. So similarly for the summer, it goes 2.2 degree Fahrenheit. That means, more warming and a more evaporative water demand will be there. So similarly, precipitations, same data. We look for it was for the 122 years. There is no changes in Utah. This we can see there. Even in the recent years, we cannot see that much changes. Compared to other area like California and then other neighboring states, precipitation rate is going down, but in Utah there is not that much change. So even if we pull the data, that's all the time series data, there is we plot similarly 1950 to 2000, 2000 to 2017. This average is not changing. There is not that much trend. But we look on the similar comparison for the winter season, the precipitation is going up like 8.2% high, but in summer season it's going 2.6% down. So we are not sure if it is rain or snow, but the winter precipitation average of the last 70 years, so it's gradually going up. So this figure shows how Utah climate, the temperature will be changed in the future. There are so many multiple models, multiple downscaling methods that are very complex. And then in this case, it's a very simple illustrations. This is zigzags. Yellow one is the historical one. Green one is for the lower emissions, and this red one is for the higher emissions. That just this is so unknown because of the we don't know what type of future economic growth or so many environmental changes will be taking place. So we are sitting today and looking for 2100, but it gives some idea that at least the trend is going up, and in the middle of the century there will be around 3 to 5 based on the different model predictions for Utah. And by end of century, it will be like 5 to 10. So that's the range of changes for the temperature. Similarly, for the precipitations, there is no confirmations of, there will be increase or decrease. Most of the models are very uncertain. It says like -5% to +10%. If we look in this map, it is, this is a projection from the NOAA, and it says about 5% increase in Utah by the end of century. So, well, those are the general signals. Then what are the signals in hydrology? For example, snowpack. As we know, in Utah, we get 80 to 90% of the water in the river or lake, wherever is from the snow source. Snow is very important. So in this map, you can see all the networks of snow tele stations that's maintained by NRCS. So we wanted to see how the April 1st snow water equivalence, that's a SWE value that measures the snowpack depth, is changing throughout that time period. For example, in the Cache Valley, we chose the randomly one point in the northern side of the Utah, that's a 20 group lake, which has 8,400 feet, and just plotting the time series of how it is going down and up, all the variability. And then similar to other temperature and precipitation, if we compare the available data 1980 to 2000, and then after that, it was a little bit going down. It's about 4%, but it shows very unclear and poor trend. Only if we compare the average, it's going down. Similarly, we consider another station in Iron County, and this is in a higher altitude, 9,607 feet, and we compare the same, and the rate of change is it's higher. That's a 12.4%. Again, here also statistically not that significant trends because the time period is really short. So the next hydrological drivers is streamflow. So in this map, we can see all those dots that represents the gauge stations that's maintained by USGS. So in this case, we said, okay, look on this Weaver River near Oakley Station, which has a very not extreme human intervention. It shows nearly natural flows, and how the hydrograph is changing at that point. So the figure here is the monthly hydrograph. You can see several lines here, just overlapping. It could be confusing, but this black line, dash, and the black line, it shows the historical 1950 to 1990, then 1981 to 2010, and then this line, the orange line, is for the future. So the main message here is, the timing and the peak of the hydrographs are changing. And there is also some changes in the overall annual volume of water we are getting. But in this station, based on this study, they say there is not that much changes. Similarly, we look on the Provo River near Woodland, and it shows the similar type of trend at least. So all those like the 1950s going up to end of century, black line, and then going up, upper. Those changes to the stream flow, it varies from the watershed to watershed. If we are considering a smaller watershed, it seems like they are more sensitive because of the way the snow we are getting and the rate of change of the snow melt. For example, this hydrograph shows the Big Cotton Canyon that's in the Salt Lake. So this is the daily hydrograph, average daily hydrograph of 1994 to 2005, 1995 to 2004, that's 10 years. Then we push the different climate scenarios, and then average one we get for this red line hydrograph changes for 2035 to 2044. Similarly, for the end of century, that's 85 to 94. So the message here is, well, the annual volume is not changing significantly. By the end of century, it's around 10% reduction. In the middle of century, it's about 5%. But the timing of the average is really going down, like 3 to 4 weeks. But in the middle of the century, about 4 to 6 weeks by the end of century. So this type of shifting or getting the early runoff or early water, more water in the reservoir or lake, has been also in other neighboring states studies, and then it will affect the way we manage the water treatment or reservoir operations. So another extreme event affects the weather effects is the drought, is the deficiency of moisture content. So in these figures, we can see the yellow where we get the drought, and then the green on the upper axis, it shows all the wet years. So you can see 1930, 1960, 70, 90, 2000, 2010s, those were all those extreme drought. And this is in the modified Palmer Drought Severity Index. That's the most commonly used drought measuring, severity measuring index. So while just looking on these events, and then based on the other observations, it's kind of scary. They said that there will be more frequent and intense events, but there are so many unknowns. And it will have the implication to the wildfire and then the flooding. Those things will be related. So this slide shows how the flood has been changed. You can see the flash flood, 3 types of floods. The small bars are floods, that's in the rural floods, the general floods. And another is urban small stream floods, and the top tall bars are flash floods. So this just line is the 5 years average, and then this is the average of everything. So that while in Utah, flash is not that disastrous compared to the other states, but the trend is really scary because it shows about 75% increase. We don't know, it could be by the wildfire or other changes in the watershed, or it could be the combination of snow melt and rainfall or extended rain. The reports doesn't indicate what were the causes of those flash flood. So in summary, the temperature is going up around 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Precipitation is not changing that much. Tree value is going down, but there is no mathematically proven that's an acceptable trends. Drought is going up, that record shows. Flash flood is going up. And then it will have the effect to the water availability. Of course, quantity and quality is affected. And it's not only the water body that will be directly affected by those meteorological or climate change or weather or extreme events, but there are direct and indirect effects of other interdependent or interconnected infrastructure systems. And that will have the effect or impact will be larger than we will think of. And then in the future also, we are expecting the higher rate of changes. So I think, we cannot modify the climate. This is the global issues, but, most of the cases, the agencies we are the public utility, we need to plan and adapt for the climate adaptations and mitigation strategies. Within that reports, I have listed what could be the short terms and or long terms. From the planning perspectives within the divisions, we have started to evaluate and project the climate signals. So there are multiple climate models, different methods available. So we have to be careful on selecting the acceptable methods of future climate projections. And we need to evaluate, at least we need to have a better idea on how, where, and when the climate signals are changing or will be changed in the future. And also, if we have those informations, then the hydrological drivers like snowpack, snow melt, reservoir, stream flow, groundwater, and water quality, what are those important parameters will be severely affected in our operations that we need to identify and analyze. I think that is also within the part of the study inside the divisions. That's we have started. So the next will be if we know where it will be the risk or it will be the impact, then we can identify what are the best practices that has been adopted in the similar environment, similar situations, or in other areas. We can organize the stakeholder meetings and then invite the decision makers for the participations, and then we can at least plan, adopt, and monitor those plans. That's the general thinking process. That's we are working on inside the divisions. So this is just the end of my presentations. I think there's a little bit more information in the reports, and I would like to thank you for your attention and happy to take any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. It's hot and dry is the long and the short of it, isn't it? Getting hotter and drier. At least it is down where I'm at.
Yeah.
Okay, board members, do you have any questions you'd like to ask Krishna while you've got him here? Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Randy. Can I ask a couple of questions?
Please.
As you went through the study, I wondered if you looked at watershed management and how the watershed is being managed, or if you looked at any of those factors.
Thank you for the questions. That in this case, we just started to just paint the overall pictures of the entire state. So in our next steps or stage of our analysis, we'll focus on the different river basins. So we'll be going in the details from basin to basin. We haven't done what you have suggested. I think that is very important things that we should go.
I appreciate that. And then when you look at floods, at least in our area, the substantial floods that we've seen happen in the Uinta Basin have mainly occurred where the overgrowth of the forest or the watershed, and then you get a major fire, and then you have the storms come in is when we get the really huge runoff, and it's due more to it comes back to watershed management so much. And it's interesting, the precipitation doesn't change, but the runoff does, and I think it's based on the watershed mismanagement. That's my observation.
Yeah, thank you for your observation. I think that totally makes sense. We have seen that I didn't present the extreme precipitation graph. If we observe those extreme precipitations, that means the precipitation that for more than 1 inch per hour rate, it's not changing, but the flash flood is changing. So potential reasons could be that watershed management, so wildfire, and then other whatever changes is taking place within the watershed, the land covers. I think that's.
Well, I appreciate your comments and keep those in mind as you move forward. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kyle.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Krishna, very interesting information. Could you make your slide presentation available to us?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what we will do is we'll make a PDF and send it out to the board members.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board or want to ask Krishna?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, but I just thank you for the excellent research, and I look forward to taking a look at the slides. And this is such an important, I was actually on a call this morning when I was talking about climate-related risk in financial markets. And so I appreciate that the Board of Water, or that the Department of Division of Water Resources is doing this type of analysis and making this information available.
Okay, good. Thank you, Juliet. Any other comments or questions? Now, this is on the agenda and there wasn't really any action to be taken on it other than just a report. But nonetheless, Randy Staker, were there any public comments received on this?
No, I'm afraid there weren't.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Okay, let's go on to the next item on the agenda, Lake Powell Pipeline Report, and Joel Williams. This one is yours to give staff report on, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things to update the board on. The water rights change application, as we know, was filed. The protest period closed, and there were 6 protests that were filed. A response to those protests has been prepared and has been filed in response. So essentially, it's now in the hands of the state engineer to determine when she would like to hold the hearings and when those will be scheduled, and we will let the board know once those hearings have been scheduled. Another item would be the draft environmental impact statement. It came out on June 8th and is open for a 90-day public comment period. I can't talk. And the 90-day comment period will end September 8th. And part of that is we have a comment letter that the board planned to submit, and that has been out to you all for review. And at the end of my presentation, we will look for a motion or for the board's approval to submit that letter to the environmental impact statement draft comment period. There will be 2 agency and public virtual open houses held as part of that meeting on July 8th and 9th. There is, and so more information will be coming out on those. There is a biological opinion that the Fish and Wildlife Service has been working on, that a draft will come out. We're expecting sometime in July, which will be kind of a summary of biological impacts to the project, due to the project. Another item that we've been working on is called a Programmatic Agreement, and that is relating to the Section 106 compliance, covering natural, cultural and historic artifacts. And so this group has been meeting. When you get on conference calls there, I think we've seen as high as 80 participants in some of these calls. So you'll have the state historic preservation offices, representation from tribes, BLM archaeologists. It tends to be specialists kind of from all over the West here, discussing how will we handle cultural and historic artifacts that may be encountered as part of the project construction. And so ultimately that agreement will become something that they call a historic properties treatment plan, an HPTP, and that will be developed. But this kind of first step is to come up with what they call the programmatic agreement. So we're working on that. Just wanted the board to be aware that those meetings are going on. Another item would be the Clean Water Act, Section 404 permit. That is involving the Army Corps of Engineers. And so we actually just, we will be submitting probably today or tomorrow our nationwide permit application to the Army Corps of Engineers. The impacts there would be most likely the intake at Lake Powell, the terminal reservoir at Sand Hollow, and then the intermittent streams and dry washes that would be crossed as the pipeline goes across. And by eliminating the forebay and afterbay, many of the impacts have been reduced on that for the Army Corps. So that should be a fairly straightforward process. Part of that will also be coordinating with the State Division of Water Quality and also the Division of Water Rights on the stream alteration permit. So those are kind of somewhat tied together. Public education and outreach efforts. As you've seen, there have been some news articles lately that I think as the draft environmental impact statement came out, it's generated some renewed interest in commenting about the project. And so there's been a lot of efforts that way. And we do appreciate the board's suggestion in the briefing meeting to perhaps put out a letter explaining kind of where their feelings and reasons for the project. I'll review the board or the Bureau of Reclamation's timeline. They plan to come out with a final environmental impact statement November 27th. They're planning on records of decision January 19th of 2021. And they have been working very hard to keep this this project on time. Our contract with Stantec goes through the end of this year. We have about $2 million remaining, and based on expenses that we're forecasting to get through the end of this year with the final EIS and the information that will be required there, we have about a buffer of about $300,000 that if all goes well, we would get to the end of this year and have that amount remaining. But we do plan to come to the board at one of the next two meetings, either August or October, to talk about extending the amendment. This would be amendment number 10 to this contract for additional time, at least, to make sure we get through the records of decision, and then depending on how things go, potentially additional money as well. But we do look like we're in pretty good shape financially to finish out this contract. That is the report that I had to give to the board. Again, the one motion that we would seek would be the approval to file the comment letter as part of the public comment period on the draft environmental impact statement. That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. Board members, do you have any questions for Joel or any clarifications that you would like? Doesn't sound like. Randy Staker, did we receive any public comments on this item?
No, there were no comments.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Okay, board, any further discussion? We've been asked by staff to have a motion to approve the comment letter, but any question, clarification on that comment letter? All of you have seen the draft of that comment letter. Any questions on that or anything that Joel has had that he presented? If not, I will entertain a motion regarding the comment letter on the environmental impact statement.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jim Lemon. I would move that the board approve the comment letter for the draft environmental impact statement.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second on Jim's motion?
This is Wayne. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion before we vote on this motion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Bear River, Charles Holmgren. Is Charles with us? Apparently he must have dropped off. Weber River, Kyle Stevens.
Yes.
Salt Lake, Juliet Tennert.
Aye.
Provo River, Wayne Anderson.
Aye.
Green River, Randy Crozier.
Aye.
Upper Colorado River, Norman Johnson.
I vote aye.
Lower Colorado River, James Lemon.
Aye.
And it looks like Charles Holmgren is back with us. Bear River. Charles, are you there?
Mr. Chairman, I vote aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've had a vote, and the vote is unanimous to support the comment letter on that. Thank you. Thank you, Joel. Okay, next item on the agenda is our Bear River Development Report, dealing somewhat with the corridor preservation, right-of-way acquisition, and updates. Marisa Egbert will give us a report from staff on this.
There I go. Can you hear me?
We do, yes.
I could probably still be muted and Todd would hear me still. So I'm going to share a screen a couple of times. I'm going to talk specifically. We have closed on and purchased one property at this point. It takes forever to buy dirt. So let me pull this up. Okay, does that Google Earth show up?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Great. See that yellow pin? So I'm gonna try to use an arrow. Can you see this little hand tool?
Yes.
Okay, I'm making you dizzy then. So down here is Todd Adams. You'd like to let us know what that is right there? Smith and
believe
Edwards.
that's Smith and Edwards.
There we go. All right. There's the macaroni bowl, I like to call it, that shoots off to US 89. So this is South Willard. So this is the property, Willard Bays over here, our fun little skinny corridor. So I'm going to zoom in. Hopefully no one gets seasick. Yes, this is a residential area. Some of these properties that do not have houses on them, there was a letter that went out last year just saying, if you're looking to sell, let us know. And so this is actually a detention basin. So fun. So that's the first purchase. And I'm now going to switch my sharing and hopefully. Okay. Let me turn on another one. And is that showing?
Yes.
A map? Great. So this is the name of the subdivision. North is up, and the parcel we purchased is right here where it says detention pond. This is US 89 over here. So it's down here at the bottom. So we've got that, and then I'm gonna go to the next page so you can now, north is now going to the right of your screen. And it's this property right here. So Willard Bay's at the top, US 89 is down the screen. And so that's the property right there. And then just moving again, you can see it with some definition there from the satellite imagery. That the appraisal came out at $29,400, and that's what we purchased for. We're only using appraised values. We also asked if they wanted to lease back, and they are not leasing back. So that was an option as well. So we wanted to make you aware of that purchase, and there's also, the $29,400 there for that, plus any closing costs and plus, costs that were entailed with the surveyor and appraiser and right-of-way agent as well. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that if I can get to the right place. Okay. And so that's where we're at. It takes a while for these things to go through. So I'll let you know too that we are working with several other owners that have either received a letter and called us, or word of mouth, or one of the towns, Perry or Willard, let them know, and they have contacted us. We have several that are at different levels of negotiation, communication at this point. Some with just appraisals in the works, others where appraisals have come in and the offer's been made and we're waiting to hear back from them. There are some that are looking to lease back. So we're trying to work out that as well. And so these are both the ones that we have kind of in limbo, at different levels of negotiation right now, are both residential and undeveloped. So our focus really was the undeveloped, stay ahead of houses, but where people think they might be moving or they don't want to be affected by the project, they have reached out to us and just trying to basically know what their options are. And then also UTA, in discussions with UTA, they requested to terminate the MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, that we had with them. It was very important to help us get started on our right-of-way process. It was something that we did not have a lot of experience in, and so it really helped to start that process with them. And just in general, became a little bit cumbersome in many ways to try to do the two agencies. So the formal Memorandum of Agreement, they sent us a termination letter per the MOA, and then we have replied with an acknowledgement letter. And the acknowledgement letter talks about how, yes, the Memorandum of Agreement is finalized, but there's a surveying contract that UTA has in place with Meridian Engineering, and the Division of Water Resources is in that scope of work. And so the surveyor is still finishing up the scope of work that includes work for us, and then that's where UTA will be forwarding invoices to us to reimburse that. In the meantime, we've got a contract for a right-of-way agent that is being able to reach out and do the right-of-way agent work for us, whereas before we did not have that. And so that's kind of where we are. There's some questions and some things we're trying to figure out about maintenance and of maintaining these properties, that we're now bought one and possibly buy others soon, and how to handle that. So we've got some conversations going on with some other agencies and trying to figure out what's the best move for us on maintaining and managing properties. So that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Marisa. Does the board have any questions for Marisa on this? Any board members? Okay, Randy Staker, even though we're not taking any action on this, it's just an update report, but Randy Staker, did we receive any public comment on this item on the agenda?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you clarifying public comment and not comments from Randy.
Yes.
Oh, I've got plenty of comments.
Okay, next up on the agenda is our Director Todd's report. Director Adams.
Yes, we've gone on for a long time, lot longer than I expected, but I've got about 5 items, if that's okay, and I'll try to hit them really quick. First and foremost, the division and staff have been working really hard on the next statewide state water plan, and hopefully we'll have that out in the next several months. As we continue to work on it, we find other things that we want to dive into and make sure they're correct. Once we get a little bit closer to that, we will get a draft out to you all, as well as the public and those things, and we'll go through a draft of there, and hopefully by this fall we'll have a final draft out. So there's that. In light of the COVID and everything that we're doing with teleworking and whatever, it's kind of put some things on, I don't know if it's on hold or at least slowed them down, whether it's what Marisa just talked to you about on Bear River. It definitely slowed down our water breaking project manager contract. We got slowed down by the process. We had to get approval ultimately through the governor's office, and I think we've got those things now done. The special session, I believe, is still going, and we'll know more on budget and other issues with that. Let's talk about budgets while we're right here. The division was asked, or all of the divisions, all of the departments in the state of Utah were asked for a 2%, 5%, and 10% budget cut. We submitted those. We went back and forth with questions, answers. Some of the things that we ultimately put on the list were taken off, and others were put on. We had about a $400,000 budget cut to our operating budget, which equates to about 10%. Yesterday, we're still waiting to see what the final thing is with the special session. Yesterday, it came back to us that the budget cut was not quite the 10%, but wasn't the 2%. So it's around 7 or 8%. And We lost some things, and we'll continue to work through that and try to make sure that we have staff in positions where we can get the work done. So that's the component on that. Now with COVID around, we're still trying to transition to whatever state of COVID we're in. Kane County's now in green. The rest of the state's in yellow, and right here in Salt Lake City, and I think West Valley is still in orange. And so it's been difficult to have it like this. We've got a lot of staff telecommuting. Most days we have 2 or 3 folks in the office. That's it. We are protecting ourselves. We have masks. We have hand sanitizer. We have all those things to try to personal protective equipment to keep staff safe. And knock on wood, so far we've had no staff members sick with COVID. And then the very last thing, the 5th and final one, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I can't tell you how proud I am of staff, as you saw today, in all of the special items, new applications, policies, resolutions, planning reports, Lake Powell Pipeline, Bear River Development, and everything else that we do. How proud and how excited I am. And I'm not going to be saying side by side, because the only side by side we're happening is right here when you can see us on a screen. But at least working together side by side with staff, they are absolutely 100% awesome. From the bottom and almost to the top. That means not to my level, but to Candace's level, they are 100% awesome. And I appreciate everything that they do from the bottom of my heart. And it's amazing to watch all the things that they're doing. So a special thank you to our staff. Mr. Chairman, that's it. If there's any questions that I can answer, please let me know.
Any board members have any question for Director Adams?
Without a good head, the tail don't wag.
There you go.
Thank you, I think.
Something like that.
Well, and I would like to echo what Todd has said concerning staff. I've had a fair amount of interface with various staff members, and I appreciate also all of the efforts that are being made. Thank you. With that, let's go back one time to Randy. Randy, were there any other public comments received as part of the comment on our meeting today?
There was one. I'm not sure if you want to address it or not, but it was not related to the board. It was from someone wanting to know about the status of which lakes had restrictions because of the quagga mussels. And Kim Wells, our PIO, sent them some information and a number that they could also contact. So that was the only comment that we had online today.
Okay, thank you, Randy. So it's just a question on quagga mussels, and it sounds like staff is addressing it. It wasn't anything directly related on the agenda then, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, notwithstanding, the rules say that any comments we get need to be read into the record. So Randy, would you mind just reading into the record that comment that was received, please?
Sure, let me bring it up real quick. Sorry, my computer's a little slow. It says, I'm trying to find out what lakes have restrictions because of the quagga mussels and what are the regulations on putting a boat on these lakes. I'm considering selling my boat because I can't use it anywhere. And that's it.
Okay, that's the comment. Okay, so if we can just have that read into the record then, and then as duly note that didn't have anything to do with our agenda, so we are not going to take any action on that particular item. Okay, does any of the other board members have anything else besides we adjourn? I guess one thing would be that our next meeting is scheduled for August 6th. Whether it will be a meeting in person or whether it will be another virtual meeting, we'll just have to wait and see, but we'll see how things play out, but plan on August 6th for our next board meeting. Does anyone have anything else before we adjourn? If not, I will entertain a motion to close our meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Okay, it sounded like Jim made the motion. Do we have a second?
It's Kyle, I'll second it.
Boy, we had people falling all over each other on that one, didn't we?
Mad race to the door.
So we've had a motion and a second. Take a roll call vote. Bear River, Charles.
Aye.
Weber River, Kyle.
What if I were to say no?
You can say.
Aye.
Salt Lake, Juliet.
Aye.
Provo River, Wayne.
Aye.
Green River, Randy.
Aye.
Upper Colorado River, Norman.
Absolutely, aye.
Lower Colorado River, Jim.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Thanks.